Let's talk about tracking children. In fact, let's do that now. Would you use an app to track the whereabouts of your children? Is it caring or is it overbearing? It's a trend which has gained momentum over the last few years. Health experts, though, warn that using tracking devices can make children more anxious and feel less independent. What do you think about tracking apps? Should we know the whereabouts of our loved ones all the time? Clare Fernyhough is from Generation Focus and can talk about this. Clare, hello. Did I pronounce your surname correctly? I'm not sure I did.
Fernyhough.
Fernyhough,
yes.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Clare, Happy New Year. Welcome to the programme.
Thank you very much.
Generation Focus, what has it been campaigning for?
So we are campaigning for all schools to be smartphone free. We want to get smartphones out of schools as soon as possible, ideally by next year. And we're doing that because we're hearing from head teachers that they are just seeing a whole range of huge impacts in the school day. And, from, not being able to focus, not being able to interact, not being able to learn properly. And it's just having a wider impact on childhood as a whole. So we're working with head teachers to basically just get them out of schools as soon as possible.
You have spoken to other parents and head teachers about this. What is the general consensus regarding tracking? I know you're trying to get smartphones out, but in terms of tracking?
So tracking is a really interesting one because it's becoming the norm that we track our children wherever they are, and it's beginning to feel like that's just what we do as parents. And the problem is that means that actually we feel like we need to give them smartphones so that we can do that. And as psychologists, we've come together and health professionals to say, look, we think actually we need to really rethink that and think about the potential psychological consequences of tracking, because actually it more than anything, it's kind of us putting our own anxiety onto our children, because we're kind of telling them, actually, you're not safe unless we can track you wherever that you are. And it's actually having an impact on children building their own resilience as well and their own independence, because if they've just got this umbilical cord back to their parents the whole time, they're not learning how to solve problems on their own. They're not actually learning what to do in an emergency.
Oh, just lost Helen.
Those natural things.
Sorry, I just lost you for a moment.
Hello?
You're saying they're not learning what to do in an emergency?
Yes, exactly. They're not learning that resilience, that, problem-solving skills that we really need them to be learning, because they've got that umbilical cord back to their parents to call them, and constantly knowing that they're being tracked. So we believe that there is a bit of a kind of unintended consequence there, and we need to be pausing. We understand why parents do it. It makes complete sense, doesn't it, that you want to know where they are all the time? But actually, it's a natural rite of passage for us as parents to slowly let go, and for children to learn to live in the real world without that umbilical cord, which is why we've come together to kind of write a letter to say, look, parents, please just think about this. Obviously it's up to everyone to make their own decisions, but, just to really think about what might be the consequences that are happening for kids if they are constantly tracked.
Let's bring in Helen Brown, who uses tracking apps with her family. Hi, Helen. Morning.
Good morning.
Morning. Yes. I hope you've caught most of what Clare was saying. Yes. You do use these apps. Why and who for?
I do. I use them with my teenage children, largely because teenagers are just so terrible at answering the phone or replying to text messages. So I like to know when to get dinner on, all those kind of practical issues. And yet there are concerns. My son hikes a lot. He likes sort of hauling himself around local quarries and up and down hills and mountains. So I do like to keep vague tabs on where he is. But that's it. I do agree that we do need to talk with our children about how, when, why we use these things. My son was recently out with a bunch of his friends and all of their phones died. They were so lost in the moment and they realized they didn't actually know where they were. But hats off to them. A bunch of teenagers actually figured out how to go to a shop, get some change and use a phone box. They were like, it was like being in Stranger Things, Mum. It was so retro.
What do you make of the idea? When you track your children, how much, are they tracked all the time, or just like, say, when they go out or away from the home? When are they tracked?
I have to say, I probably flip onto the app once or twice a week, and I would say 9 times out of 10, it's to check if they've lost their phone, so they'll not be able to find their phone, and 9 times out of 10, I'll be using it to say it's in the lounge. So it'll be under a cushion. That
Well,
is
then,
the majority.
if
That's the
you're
most
not
common time I
using,
use it.
if you're not using it for tracking, then why do you have them on the phones?
Because every now and then I do think it's helpful. And I interviewed a psychologist about this a while ago, and he said, ask yourself why you're using the apps. Ask your children why they're using them. And all of these things are about our anxieties. So I do have occasional little maternal starts of little jolts of anxiety. If my daughter, if I'm in London working and I think, oh, is she home from school? She's not answering the phone. And I will just have a quick ping in. And maybe I should, like the psychologist said, learn to sit with that anxiety until I get home. But I do prefer just to give it a quick squash. I can see she's home. And actually, like the psychologist said to me, that doesn't prove she's safe. She could have come in and poured a boiling pan of hot water over herself. So all I know is the phone is back. But it does dampen down that twinge of anxiety. And likewise for my daughter, when she knows I'm working, she worries about when I'll be home. I mean, as a teenager, she doesn't listen. So even if I say I'll be late home tonight from a meeting, she'll have forgotten that by the time she gets in from school. And she'll know that she can't phone me. I might be in interviews, I might be in meetings, I might not be able to pick up my phone. She'll get a little ping, oh, mum's at the office. She won't be home for another 2 hours. I will make myself some cheese on toast.
But a text message could do that, couldn't it?
Yes, if I wasn't in an interview, then I would be able to answer a text message, and if my children would reply to anything from me, I wouldn't need it either.
Getting lots of texts. Ian, who says he's 70 years young, says, you made me laugh, Naga, as my 50-year-old daughter put an app on my mobile to track me. Is she over the top? Brian in Bucks says, I track my son and he can track me on our phones. He put the tracker on to put my mind at rest while doing 2 years of travelling through South America and Central America. He's 31. Another, Katie says, my teenage daughter can see where I am and I can see where she is. She says she would much prefer me to track her rather than call asking where she is and if she's on her way home, etc., which is kind of the point you were making there, Helen. Claire, I mean, your thoughts just thinking about how Helen's using this and how some of our audience is using this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, Helen, you sound like you're taking a really moderate approach. And I love the story of actually your son being able to kind of sort things out when he needs to. I think the problem is some people are not doing that, and it can become a bit of an addiction, because that feeling of uncertainty, that really kind of worrying moment when our kids start doing something independent, that it's just now we can use technology to disrupt that feeling of uncertainty. And I think we all need to get a little bit better about not knowing what's happening, where someone is, and constantly contacting them as well. And this is for both parents and children. We're not developing that muscle of being able to live with uncertainty and being able to wait. And I think what that does to children is it can potentially be quite, disruptive to their development. Also,
it can be quite gendered as well, I was going to say, because there seems to be more men who are tracking their female daughters than women tracking sons, and I think that's interesting. And we have to be very careful about how we feed into a child's sense of confidence. Are we telling our girls they are less safe than our boys?
Yes,
we have to
absolutely.
be very mindful of all these things.
Yeah. And there's no evidence that the world is less safe. Actually, the world is as safe as it ever was. And we just need to think carefully about the messages that we are implicitly sending to our kids, and also the messages that the tech companies are implicitly sending to us. We've got these trainers now where you can track your child by their trainers. And if you look at the marketing, it says, if you want to have peace of mind, use these trainers. We just need to think carefully about how manipulative that is, and kind of just pause and reflect. And we may decide actually tracking, is what we want to do. But I think we're sleepwalking into a norm here, just like we did with social media. We were told that social media would help our kids, make them more connected. We now know there's a really big impact on them negatively. And I would argue that this could potentially be the same, and we just need to really think about it.
Liz's message saying, what a world children are being brought up in, constantly tracked by their parents, 5 exclamation marks. This is definitely not normal behaviour, and the sufferer of it is the child. It is almost child cruelty, as it's denying children to be independent, which is a natural rite of passage. So says Liz. What do you make of that, Helen?
I think, again, again, it's how you use it, isn't it? A lot of people would say it's allowing them to send their children off maybe on adventures that they wouldn't if they didn't have the tracking apps. There's certainly hikes that I've sent my son on that I would maybe have been more cautious about if I had no way of being able to follow him. He often doesn't hike with friends. He likes to do it alone. We have lost hikers. So he's gained independence, and he's never needed to phone me, apart from the time when, in fact, the time when he had to figure out how to use a payphone. So, for me, there is a reassurance in knowing that if he's, up in the Peak District or, up in the mountains somewhere, that, there will be a ping, there will be a chance of knowing where he is. So he's gained independence through it. But again, it's mindfulness, isn't it? It's not being all over them all the time. I wouldn't track him on his daily trip to the shop.
It's an interesting subject. Thank you both for giving me a point of view, because I've learned a lot. Helen Brown, who uses tracking apps for her family, with her family, thank you. Clare Fernyhough from Generation Focused and journalist, thank you very much as well.
Thank you.